Greetings to all 5D chess aficionados. In the previous two videos we got acquainted with the 5D Chess Pro app and learned how to use its played games database. In this video we will reinforce what we've learned by loading and analyzing one of my games, where we'll see how en passant with blocking universe works and what consequences it can have for the further progression of the game. Let's get started. We click on My Game button and open the database. This is the game we're interested in, so let's open it. We'll close the database window and the system chat. Select the Play as Black orientation since I played as Black. Go back to the start of the game to avoid spoilers and create a daughter game. We'll also open the Navigator panel. In the description of the game's preset we see its name, STD Empire, en passant, only traveling, blocking all. By clicking the full information button on the preset we can note that en passant is allowed. But since the free-for-all mode is disabled, only identical pieces can capture each other en passant. We also see that restoring our pieces after en passant is disabled. You can learn more about preset settings from the first part of the introduction to the app. A link to it with a timestamp should appear somewhere here. Well, now that we know the rules, let's move on to the game itself. We'll use the parent game move restore button to get next moves from it. Black chooses one of the most reliable setups, with the knight on f6 which will protect the f7 square from future travels along the file, and with the pawn on e6 which will protect it from diagonal travels. Usually white plays the Tsarina to b3 to then strike f7 in the past. But since they've already played c4, the c-pawn prevents them from making this move. So black isn't worried about this strike and simply develops. In my strong belief you should only castle when necessary. The fewer squares the royal piece has visited, the fewer opportunities the opponent has to give it a check to the past. And since white's Caesar has committed to the queen side, black starts pushing pawns in that direction. Black suspects preparation for a d4 breakthrough and tries to prevent it by attacking the Tsarina and then threatening a check on a2 with a fork. I think white didn't notice that the d6 square is defended and blunders the knight. However, the game won't lose its appeal because of this blunder. Black will soon repay in kind. White defends a2, and black wants to place the bishop on e5 to control the large dark squared diagonal. To do this they remove the defender of that square. I'm not sure if this is the right decision as the bishop on b7 is quite strong. Perhaps it would have been better to castle and increase the pressure with the rooks on the queen side. Black plays cautiously. They don't want to lose the b4 pawn by playing the bishop to e5. However, perhaps they should have taken that risk. Let's see. Bishop to e5, and suppose white captures the knight and wins the pawn. Here black could have played a3. White can't move the b2 pawn because of bishop a1 mate. And there's a threat, the capture on b2 by the bishop, for which they'd have to sacrifice the Tsarina. White might think they have time to escape via d2 and capture the bishop with the rook. Here, a check by the bishop would only come on the next move, and the rook would take it. However, black has a second check by the knight, and this is a double check, which is mate. So escaping isn't an option. Another interesting continuation is d4. Now giving a check from f4 would only help white's bishop on c1 after e3, and it seems that retreating to c7 is necessary. However, black finds a move with the knight to d5. And now white's Tsarina is attacked, and black threatens a move with their Tsarina to g5 with mate. Moving the Tsarina to d2 seems to be the only defense against these two threats. To this black can capture on b2, and white can either resign or slightly prolong the agony with a move like Caesar to c2 for example. There's also the move rook to d2, defending the b2 pawn, and it seems white is safe. But let's enable Jurassic squares. We see that on f4 and e3 the archbishop and therefore our Tsarina can reach the white Caesar in the past. And with each subsequent move these two squares will move along this diagonal like a train distancing themselves from the white Caesar. Black can try to catch this train by positioning the Tsarina on g5 in time. Let's free up the way for the Tsarina with tempo and make the already discussed move with the knight to d5. We'll create a test board and enable Jurassic squares again. We see that our two squares have shifted, and the second carriage of this train is ready to be met by our Tsarina on g5 with the next move. White now faces a difficult choice. Their Tsarina is under attack, but they also need to defend the g5 square. They'll have to sacrifice something. But let's return to the move Tsarina to c7. I think white should have tied their play to the development of the bishops, playing bishop c3, bishop g2, followed by f4, aiming at a8 and providing their bishops with long diagonals. But white plays b3, taking advantage of the fact that black's a4 pawn is pinned. Black also takes advantage of the newly freed up b2 square and plays bishop e5, as now white needs to worry about the a1 square rather than winning the b4 pawn. On one hand, black defends the knight with the Tsarina, and on the other hand prepares a bishop Tsarina battery for an invasion into the white monarch's position. It was probably best to capture, but black was tempted by the mate after the Tsarina's pass traveled to a1. They observed that the white Tsarina on a3 couldn't capture the black Tsarina en passant, as the distance to all travel squares is always different for both Tsarinas. The black Tsarina has one square to c3 while the white Tsarina has two. And to b2 the black Tsarina has two squares, while the white Tsarina has one. So black confidently makes the move believing that en passant will be impossible. But it turned out to be not quite so. Another white Tsarina appears and it can capture the black Tsarina en passant. Just like that. When we instantly switch to the last board, it's not always clear what happened. That's why I added the option to disable the follow the last board function and the option to follow it only horizontally. Let's do it this way. And now it's clear. This white Tsarina captured the black Tsarina en passant here, and created a new universe here. Now the universe created by black is blocked, and the game continues in the two remaining universes. Neither side has an advantage in the number of universes. Both white and black can create new active universes. Let's capture at least one of the many white Tsarinas. And try to open the A file to activate the rook. White clearly didn't like these knights. Maybe the Caesar should have tried to escape rather than sacrificing the Tsarina. However, white got a decent game on the queen side. In the top universe, black tries to take as much material as possible for the Tsarina captured en passant, while in the bottom universe they move the Caesar away from potential checks from g7 and try to connect their rooks to feel more secure. Black moves the Caesar to h8 so that white captures on g7 without giving a check. Otherwise black could get mated like this. And the rook on a8 can't capture the Tsarina on the top board because of the check. Black didn't grasp white's plan and didn't assess the Tsarina's move to a4. They thought white was aiming to capture the b4 pawn in the bottom universe and defended it with the bishop. But white executes quite a good idea. Black tries to move the Caesar to a universe inaccessible to the white Tsarinas, as the new black universe is separated from the main battlefield by the previously blocked universe, and a check from the top universes is only possible by a knight. White's plan begins to take shape. They create universe after universe, building a vertical line along which the black Caesar somewhere at the bottom would receive a check to the past. However, neither black nor I suspect white noticed that they can no longer create another universe by playing to this a8 square. The Tsarina doesn't move here according to the rules, and it can't move here because there's no board here. And if you try to build such a vertical line of checks on the next move, the black Caesar in the bottom universe has already castled and there won't be a check. Capturing here on h8 can give a quadrigonal check to the past, obviously white can't do, as the rook is defended. It seems White is setting a trap and trying to escape with their Caesars. I suspect they thought that if Black created another universe, White would have a double check from these two Tsarinas. During the game, this is exactly what it seemed like to Black. That one Tsarina would check here, and the other here. But the Caesar was here, and here was empty, and there wouldn't be a check. If the viewer is interested in such a crazy position, they can find it in the database and try to solve this horror. We'll move on. Black decides not to create new universes and to finish the game with the existing ones. Since White moved their Caesar out of the bottom universe cut off from the rest of existence, winning here is no longer possible. So Black switches to defense, especially since they have two Caesars here. Black's pawn gives a check to the past, but capturing it with the Caesar is impossible, as it's defended by the knight from the bottom universe. And in the bottom universe, the knight promoted on A1 gives checks to the past, and something needs to be done about that too. If you capture the bottom knight on A1, there's nothing to capture the pawn on the top board with. But if you capture that pawn, White perishes from the checks of the bottom knight on A1. That's how interesting and complex this checkmate turned out to be. Be cautious when traveling to the past in presets with en passant. It's better to create a daughter game, make this move there, confirm it in the daughter game, and see if en passant capturing is possible. Then return to the parent game and make the move there. Of course, if the time on the clock allows. Also keep in mind that a blocked universe, as we've seen, cuts the game battlefield, and moving from one part of it to another becomes possible only for such pieces as the knight, camel, giraffe, Pegasus and the like. I hope you enjoyed this game. Please write in the comments what you think about it and share your lines. Thank you for your attention. Join our community on Discord, Telegram and Facebook via the links in the description or the QR codes you see on the screen. Add the Dropbox folder to your favorites, where you can always find the full current version of the app, the latest update, and the fresh game database. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it, leave a comment, subscribe, share this video with friends. Support the channel, and hit the bell to not miss the next videos. All the best, and see you next time.